If the devil came knocking at your door, would you let him in? Although there are some adrenaline junkies who would take upon this challenge, I don't think most of us would partake in such venture. But he seldom does things that way. He is patient, cunning, and way more astute than mortal man. He waits for the perfect moment, when things can't go any worse, when you've completely depleted any joy in living. He won't come cracking the ground open while spewing out hellfire, or have a grotesque set of goat horns and hoofs. He won't stab you with his pitchfork or show you the infinite ire harbored in his ever-burning eyes. He could, by all means, but he won't. He'll come to you as a whisper, as a small child perhaps, or an elderly woman. He may even use someone you hold dear or love deeply. He'll then offer you that he can make all of your problems go away. He'll tell you everything that you want to hear, and more. And you'll believe him. I decided to become a priest aide after Elizabeth passed away. For some reason, Ellie and I were never able to have any children, so I figured I would serve God for the rest of my days, injecting some meaning to the void that my wife had left in my life. It didn't take long for me to realize that Father Smith was different from other priests. Most of the time his work involved normal Catholic chores: celebrate Mass, confess, baptize, and anoint the ill. Yet there was this task which set him apart from the rest. He was an exorcist. As an aide, my job would involve helping him in his every endeavor, including assisted in these events. It is why I, of all people, could not waver in the faith, not because of some preconceived doctrine or a philosophical mantra, but because it's downright suicidal when facing the forces of darkness. For the devil is not only an artist at deceiving, but also a ruthless soldier. He'll take advantage of any kinks on your armor. He'll know any dirty little secret, any sin you've committed, any misdeed you've ever done. After my first exorcism, I had no doubt in my mind that evil truly walked among us. Any skepticism I had was instantly pulled out of me like some rebellious weed. Nevertheless, even with an unyielding amount of faith, it carves a permanent scar on your soul, one that never really goes away. I've assisted 243 exorcisms in my lifetime. Having said this, I believe Father Smith and I grew comfortable in our methodology. Some might even say we grew overconfident, blinded by a false sense of mastery in our field. We had gone through 150 cases without a single complication. Yet every streak has an end. Our last exorcism came in the same fashion as any other would have, in the usual form of a letter signed and sealed by the Archbishop's office. An 18-year-old girl, whom we'll call Beth, was in dire need of an immediate exorcism. It was not odd for us to be summoned at a moment's notice. Something bugged me about this assignment, though. It felt like an itch you can scratch. "We'll head down there as soon as we're able. Pack everything. I must pray," Father Smith said as he walked over to the front row of the chapel. Both of his legs collapsed into a kneel, while his head lowered towards his chest. Contrary to popular belief, a priest cannot go guns blazing at a demon. Father Smith would have to fast and pray for 3 consecutive days in order to purify himself for the task ahead. The worst thing that could happen in any exorcism is for the priest or aides to become targets for possession. So I too fasted and prayed with him as a safety precaution. Beth's house was just a 2-hour drive from our parish, so as soon as we finished donning our spiritual armor, we both jumped into my car and rushed through the highway, ready to wage battle against Satan. The itch hadn't gone away though. I was hoping that after our purification, I would feel better. I almost convinced myself that the knot in my stomach was hunger, but having done this so many times before, I knew it was something else. "Father, why do I have a bad feeling about this case?" "It's normal, Joseph. I sometimes get anxious before an exorcism too." "I figure at this point, you'll be used to it." 1 Peter 5:8, Joseph. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walketh about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Father Smith smiled as he placed his purple stole over his head and onto his robe. Exactly. We arrived at the house at about 10 p.m. A heavy silence simmered out of every corner of the street. Awfully quiet tonight, Father Smith said, as he waved the sign of the cross with his hand. We approached the Carkle Grey house at the end of the road. The porch wooden planks creaked and warped malevolently with each of our every step, as if warning us of what lurked inside. I placed 4 gentle knocks on the door. A woman with several tufts of grey in her unruly black hair and a vacant stare answered our call. "Welcome, Father," the woman said. The eye of those who have seen the possessed are hard to forget. It's a mix of guilt, terror, and utter despair. Her skin and complexion showed an illogical array of wrinkles and aches. It did not match at all her 37 years of age. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm here to help," Father Smith said. "Father, thank God you're here," the woman replied. She shook Father Smith's hand with a fierce and concerned grip. "Thank you for coming. Please, I need you to help my little girl," the woman said. Father Smith placed one of his hands on her shoulder. "Do not worry. God never forsakes his children." She gave Father Smith a slow and thoughtful nod, perhaps in an earnest attempt to believe in his words, and then pointed to the top of the staircase. "Bet's up there. She won't come out of her room. We'll take it from here. Thank you," Father Smith said. We climbed up to the second floor. A putrid stench seeped out of the room at the end of the hallway, but we pressed on. Father Smith clasped the knob. He stopped for about 10 seconds, glancing pensively at the door. There was something out of place, something I had never felt before, and I believe Father Smith felt it too at that point. He sighed, made the sign of the cross, and opened the door. A slender, almost cadaveric girl laid in a bed under a jungle of sheets, apparently sleeping in a peaceful serenity. I padded over to the girl and verified her vital signs. Her pulse and breathing were there, thank God, but the unrelenting dread in the room made it clear that our job was far from over. We had no business questioning direct orders from the Archbishop, but standard protocol dictated that we acknowledge, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this was a demonic act. If Bet was indeed possessed, we'd have to lure the demon out, which is not exactly the easiest or most pleasant activity. I took several steps back as Father Smith walked over to Beth's side. "Hi, Beth. My name is Martin. This is my friend Joseph. We're here to help you." Beth's eye flickered briefly. Her cracked, wispy lips opened and closed without making any sound. Her bony hands and legs twitched erratically. "Beth, how are you feeling?" Father Smith whispered. Beth would not respond. A head bob, a twitch, or an eye roll here and there, but other than that, she was in a catatonic, coma-like state. "Let us pray," Father Smith said. He placed a white pocket crucifix on her left hand while applying holy water to her forehead, and just like that, our trap was set. If we could establish animadversion, we could dispel any psychological malady. But nothing happened. No burning, no outrages, no immediate retaliation. Her eyes appeared to be moving under her eyelids, but other than a bad dream, it didn't look like she was being assaulted by any entity, evil or whatnot. We were careless. A deafening wail suddenly pierced the silence that had prevailed in the narrow, dim-lit room. Beth's mouth stretched unnaturally as it boomed out a flurry of ear-shattering howls. Her whole body contorted as they barged out of her throat. Several of our patients had presented bouts of hysteria, rage, slurs of words in foreign tongues. All of these were signs of the demonic, but they were also signs of a possible psychological disorder. It was her eyes that ruled the latter out. 2 black pits of thick tar gazed back at us. Her pupils were gone, but I could feel her stare cutting into me like a scalpel. Most glorious Prince of heavenly armies, Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in our battle against principalities and powers, against the rulers of this world of darkness, against the spirits of wickedness in the high places, Father Smith said. He lowered his right hand over Beth's head. Come to the assistance of men whom God has created to his likeness, and whom he had redeemed at a great price from the tyranny of the devil. The Holy Church venerates you as her guardian and protector. To you, the Lord has entrusted the souls of the redeemed to be led into heaven. Pray, therefore, the God of the peace to crush Satan beneath our feet, that he may no longer retain men captive and do injury to the Church. Offer our prayers to the Most High, that without delay, that he may draw his mercy down upon us. Take hold of the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan. Bind him and cast him into the bottomless pit, that he may no longer seduce the nations. The girl gnashed her teeth together, creating an unsettling audio turmoil. Her legs trembled and kicked erratically, as if trying to fend off some invisible foe. In the name of Jesus Christ, our God and Lord, strengthened by the intercession of Immaculate Virgin Mary, Mother of God, of Blessed Michael the Archangel, of the blessed apostles Peter and Paul, and all the saints, and power into the holy authority of our ministry, we confidently undertake to repulse the attack and deceits of the devil. God arises, his enemies are scattered, and those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so are they driven. As wax melts before the fire, so the wicked perish at the presence of... Beth lurched up her body in a single violent jerk. I command you, demon! Tell me your name! Father Smith exclaimed while he brandished his silver cross across her face. Answer me, demon! Your name! Beth swept Father Smith to the other end of the room, like a man shoving off a fly. Her hands then flew into her face. Her nails sank deep into her skin. With a twist and a rip, she plucked a ribbon of flesh straight out of her face, tossing it down on the floor before diving back in for another scoop. She clawed at every angle, tearing out chunks of her face with each yank. Father Smith and I froze in time. None of my muscles would answer me. We stood there, watching, unable to stop her art of mutilation. Once her face was nothing more than a pulp of blood and shrieks, she plunged her arms into her chest, rendering it apart almost in half. A grating, low-pitched cry echoed out of it. If madness could ever take a physical form, this was it. Endless rows of curved, serrated teeth protruded from where her organs should be. Mangles of crimson flesh gushed out of Beth's chest, clashing against the many mouths that shot out of the fiend. It kept pushing and stretching Beth's torso further and further apart like a cocoon. Father Smith sprung back to his feet, and in a burst of motion, he took hold of both of her arms and pulled them out of the monstrous cavity. We drive you from us! Whoever you may be, unclean spirits, all satanic powers, all infernal invaders, all wicked... The world became a flash of red. I lost track of everything around me. It was as if I had ceased to exist, and I was now cradled in an endless sea of nothingness. It was a chorus of yelps by Father Smith that brought me back. The claustrophobic white walls were now painted by a red phlegm that gunked every corner of the room. Father Smith had rolled himself into a ball, rocking back and forth with both of his arms pressed under his chest. And then, everything became darkness. The next thing I can remember is waking up to a bright and cold light. I was on a hospital bed, covered almost completely in bandages, like a mummy about to be placed in a sarcophagus. Father Smith, I finally managed to say to the lady clad in white, who I assumed was a nurse. The brown in her eyes shifted ever so slightly. She then looked away, seemingly occupied with the device peeping on the left side of my bed. I'm sorry, who? She said as she wiggled an empty bag out of my IV pole. I opened my mouth once more, determined to speak again, but my lungs refused to lend me any air. I gasped and gasped again, but no words came out. She tilted her head, shrugged, and gave me one of those polite fake smiles before leaving my room. My next visitor would be a man, all in blue this time, flapping his badge around everyone like a thug flashing a loaded gun. "Mr. Stanson, can I ask you a couple of questions?" I made the effort, despite my suffocating human-sized cloth jail these doctors had me in, but only a faint hum sifted out of me. The man gave me a similar shrug, and without even attempting to cast a fake smile, left the room without saying another word. My recovery was grueling and painful. Every clumsy movement I could squander created a surge of torment throughout my body. "What happening to me?" I asked once more to the woman in white.
"As far as I know, you were in an accident, Mr. Stanson. You suffered a lot of burn damage."
"Burn damage? I didn't even get close to a light bulb back at that house, let alone any surge that could inflict these sears on my skin." Her answer, albeit out of goodwill, created a storm of thoughts inside me. "Father Smith?" I asked. The woman took a step back as a whiff of air got stuck on her throat. My eyes locked onto hers. "Where is he?" A heavy, uneasy silence, similar to the one that greeted Father Smith and I on that night, was back. A vicious thump in my chest pumped all the way to my temple.
He's recovering just like you,"
she murmured. I spotted a golden crucifix on her neck. "I'm sorry. Made you uncomfortable, Miss..."
"Lauren. It's Lauren Raham, Father."
"I am not Father. I am aid, Miss Laura. I assist Father Smith." A warm smile, the warmest and most honest I'd seen in a while, sprouted on her lips. She walked over to the front of my bed and picked up a holder pad. She whisked out a pen from her side pocket and jotted down for a couple of seconds.
"He's in the ICU,"
she said as her smile faded away. "Can I see him?" She shook her head.
"Not yet. Even though he's out of immediate danger for now, he still needs constant surveillance."
"I see." The more answers I found, the more questions they created. Officer Rogers, the man in blue, visited me from time to time. Sometimes he'd even stop by twice a day. Shortly after I regained most of my ability to speak, he crashed into my room, breathless, carrying a folder of bundled files under his arm. "Officer? Mr. Stanson?" I motioned him to the solitary seat by my side. He treaded carefully towards a chair, keeping eye contact even while sitting down. "I've heard you recovered your voice." "You heard right." Officer Rogers leaned towards me, clasping the beige folder with his thick fingers. "I need to ask you a few questions. It's about your latest case." Beth. A hail of eyes fell down my spine. "Is she... did she make it?" Both of his eyes rolled down into the white, spotless floor. "Beth's mother called 911 after hearing a loud bang out of the room where you were conducting your exorcism. They found you and Father Smith unconscious, and Beth..." He flicked through some of the papers of the folder and eventually pulled out a photograph. "I'm sorry." There wasn't a speck on the wall that had not been defiled by the strange scarlet ooze. The small body laying on the bed was covered by a white blanket. It dispelled any illusion, any psychological bastion my mind had contrived to protect me from the horrible truth. "I need you to tell me what happened in that room." "You won't believe me." "Try me." I had trouble finding a place to start. Whenever I thought about that night, a haze of static stranded me from any thoughts in my mind until all I could think of was a furious hash of black and white. Slowly but surely, I started talking. The first thought that crossed my mind as I was hearing myself tell this story was that I had, indeed, lost my head. And if he actually believed any of this, he'd have to be insane as well. I told him every detail I could remember, not minding how perplexed, disgusted, or disturbed he'd be at the end of my tale. He nodded for the most part, most likely out of custom, without interrupting me as I gave him my recollection of the facts. At some point of my reminiscing, he started writing down on one of the many papers of his morbidly obese folder. Do you remember anything else after the explosion of light? Just Father Smith on the floor, hunching over his arms. Mr. Rogers placed his left hand under his chin. Huh. I know how it sounds, but you can ask Father Smith, he might give you more info. Mr. Rogers lit the paper he was working on before slamming the folder shut. I can't. What do you mean by that? I haven't been able to have an interview with him, and quite frankly, I don't think I'll be able to. My mouth immediately dried up. The thump came back tenfold. It now thundered every corner of my body with unbridled force. Mr. Rogers raised one of his eyebrows. I assume they haven't let you see him. I need to see him. Now, I said as I poised both of my hands on my bed, ready to spring out of it, or so I thought. Whoa, easy there. I can arrange that. Just don't overdo it, okay? I might still need further statement from you, being the only witness to this murder. His words struck me like a bag of bricks. Murder? How could they ever think that we could do such a thing to a girl? Do you seriously believe we could do such a thing? Officer Rogers shrugged. It doesn't matter what I believe, Mr. Stanson. We have a girl that was brutally mutilated, along with the two men who happened to be the last persons to see her alive. Do you expect me to pass on a report that will probably get you, Father Smith, and perhaps even myself into a loony house? He was right. This wasn't the first time an exorcism had gone awry. Was it a demon, Mr. Stanson? No, I don't think so. If it wasn't a demon, may I ask what were you doing there? I shifted the pillow behind me. The device on my left started beeping again. We received a letter from the Archbishop's office. We were there to perform an exorcism, all right, but... Rogers leaned back into the chair. But? She was possessed, but not by a demon. Rogers squinted. That's a new one. By who, then? I don't know. What if she was just suffering from dementia or schizophrenia? I pointed at my legs, arms, and face. Then how do I have these injuries, officer? Did Father Smith ever embellish his stories? What? No, of course not. He's a priest. Of course. Just doing my job here. He took out another piece of paper out of his folder. So what attacked you and Father Smith? I shook my head. When a demon is possessing someone, its best trick is to stay hidden. It wants you to believe that it's not there, that it doesn't exist. If by any chance we draw it out, it tricks, it bargains, it insults, it mocks. It tries the best to mess with your head before even considering attacking. But in this particular case, it just lashed out from the beginning. I sighed. Whatever we encountered that night, it was beyond us. It was beyond God, beyond the devil. Whatever took hold of that girl stripped her out of any humanity and transformed her into something else. Something that shouldn't be in this world. I can't still wrap my head around what I saw. And to be quite honest, I don't think I'm supposed to. Officer Rogers paused for a second, and after digging inside his folder, pulled out a bunch of papers stapled together. Tell me, Mr. Stanson, do you know what caused Beth's death? I've told you already. A smirk emerged on his mouth as he flipped through the rubble of crumpled sheets. He then handed it down to me. Radiation? Rogers nodded. That's right, a lethal dose of radiation. Unless Beth had a stroll through Chernobyl or outer space before your rendezvous, none of this adds up. But wait, are we? Rogers shrugged. Staff told me that you're out of danger for now, but Father Smith's health is still a coin toss. Can I see him? Can you walk? I jumped out of my bed in a surge of adrenaline. I felt a stab of pain on one of my sides, but I kept walking. Just beyond my simple room, the hospital became a little maze. Whenever we passed through a corridor, two more branched off of it. After about 10 of the same identical wide corridors, I could feel an army of cramps building up on both of my legs. As I felt my body shutting down, we were greeted by 2 gray slabs of metal. There was a sign on one of the sides of the doors that read, ICU, in black bold letters. "This is it," he said. With newfound strength, I pushed on. As we crossed through the automatic set of doors, a clutter of beeps, alarms, and mechanical sounds filled my ears. A tall granite desk dominated the center of the lobby. A lineup of patients' rooms circled around it. Unlike my room, the walls on these were made entirely out of glass. Rogers pointed to one of the rooms behind the desk. The man inside thrashed around like a caged beast. Freakish symbols were splattered haphazardly on the crystal walls, most likely doodled with the crimson stream bleeding out of his stumps. He screamed and flailed his disfigurements in anguish, the arms that had once but would never again hold up a crucifix, as the nurses crowded in silence outside his door. "There's Father Smith,"